wow, whatever you're smoking, I want some of that because it's highly illegal and it's damn good. Okay. So
welcome to another Deals podcast. We're going to talk about the Rio's position with the current state of lithium and deals. We're going to talk about Albemarle's pursuit of Liontown. And by the end, we're going to talk about Albemarle and what's going to happen with the changes in policy. And so hello, Lucho, how are you?
hey, Paola, how are you? Good to see you as always.
Good to see you too. We don't have the sunset today.
No, it's later in Lima tonight, and the weather is changing, so we haven't had the good sunsets that we enjoyed in the last few weeks, but hopefully they'll be back soon.
Yeah, hopefully. We have a few good things to talk about today, and I know you have a lot of opinions, and I do have a lot of opinions too. So it should be a really good one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, I mean, it's a different kind of market there, and you don't
both have a lot of experience in terms of lithium and having worked with lithium extensively, and that's actually how we met. And I don't think we've talked about this publicly, but yeah, you were a client all those years ago. We are quite familiar with Rio and how they've gone around different deals in general, but they just came out a few days ago with a really interesting comment regarding where they sit in terms of making deals today. What are your thoughts on what they said? Or if you want to talk about what they said and what you think.
Well, I mean, effectively, they said that, I guess the short version is, valuations are crazy and we're not going to pay up. I don't blame them. I mean, I think, and one thing is what we'll talk about Albemarle, Liontown. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about what's going to happen in Chile, and that puts uncertainty, which drives prices higher for projects in Argentina, I imagine. But in general, I mean, talking to some very early stage, property owners, if you will, in Argentina and in Chile, they're these millions, tens of millions of dollars in expectation just come out for what ultimately in the exploration game is considered moose pasture. I mean, I don't want to be facetious about this, but you've got a property, it's in the right location, and by the right location, they're talking about the lithium triangle, Bolivia, Argentina, Chile. That's a pretty big triangle, okay? Geographic triangle, I mean, that's huge, right? I mean, so we're in the triangle, hence we must have lithium. We're in in this path, hence we must have lithium. We're like 100 kilometers away from a producing asset, hence we must have lithium. We haven't drilled, okay? We've punched some, surface holes in the salars, which is one of the benefits of lithium exploration, right? That the salars tend to be shallow. They have this shallow crust, and you basically take out. But not much more work than that has been done, and people are saying, well, this is worth tens of millions of dollars. And it's like, not really. I mean, you don't have that much until you actually drill it out, okay? In the particular case of Chile, you don't have that much until we can review the permitting situation, not just the government and the CO, but the environmental permitting, as we discussed in the podcast that we had on lithium. A lot of these of the salars in Chile are in a national reserve or close to a natural reserve, which makes permitting a lot more difficult. So there's a number of things. I don't blame them. The other side of the coin is that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's not like there are that many lithium assets out there. And on the demand side, it is very clear that lithium fundamentally should be very hot and is hot. I don't know if $75,000 a ton hot, but you know what? It's hot nevertheless. I mean, it's a lot hotter than when you and I met, when lithium was around $4,000 a ton, and $10,000 was a bit of a dream that maybe would come through at some point in time. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But at the same time, looking at the other side, you can see that anyone who's not willing to pay what, you know, companies are, you know, wanting to receive, companies, you talked more about sort of individual owners of you know, of land that they think they have, you know, potential projects, but there's also a wave of buying either assets of like secondary assets, secondary tier assets, or completely, you know, new or the full company, as we're going to talk about the Albemarle pursuit with Liontown in a bit. But I think for those types of deals, it's gonna be really hard, because it's like these companies are now the you know, the fancy thing, and they're gonna have a lot of suitors just chasing after them. So I don't know. I mean, obviously the valuation has to make sense for both parties, but in this environment, I don't know how Rio's gonna, you know, Rio or any big company that is looking to make a big move and sort of re-enter or enter in terms of those that have never been the space, if you have a company like Liontown where they, you know, we're fine, like we don't need to be bought. So if you want to buy us, you're gonna have to pay up a lot.
Okay, but I mean, let's take a step back, right? I mean, if you look at what's happening in copper, and we've had a couple of podcasts on copper, and copper is another one of the battery metals, you know, it's in demand. You know, in copper, you have the large projects, the mid-sized projects, and the small projects. I mean, there's a lot of copper in different stages of development, but also different sizes of production, right? In lithium, you don't have that. I mean, either you're producing and you're relatively big, or you're not producing at all and you're a junior. I want to retract my comment of moose pasture. You got a junior with, you know, early stage exploration. Okay. I mean, you don't have that middle ground. I mean, you know, when you and I were first met and we're looking at this business, I mean, number one, and we discussed this with, I think in our podcast with Daniel, right? I mean, you know, that anything below 500 ppm was uneconomic, and you should not even look at it, right?
Yeah,
you know, anything below 10,000 or 15,000 tons of lithium carbonate production per year was uneconomic. I mean, you were not thinking about 4,000 ton per year producer. I mean, because of prices and technology innovation, you can look at those now, right? And that's what changes the market. Now, when someone like a Rio or an Albemarle go out and do an acquisition, obviously they're looking for size.
Wow.
You know as well as I do, because we looked at it together. I mean, we looked at Rincon, and I mean, when we looked at Rincon, you know, if you had told me that Rincon at some point in time was going to be worth $900 million as an acquisition, let alone, you know, not to mention the construction, I would have been like, wow, whatever you're smoking, I want some of that, because it's highly illegal and it's damn good. Okay. I mean, so I don't know. I mean,
make a very, very strong sort of, okay, so this is what we want, and if this figure is not met, we're not seeing it as you know, we vote yes. So I think we can connect that with the tech you know, deal. It's similar in that way. So you have a very strong shareholder group that doesn't like that proposal, is happy to go it alone and continue on the journey. So I think that's interesting. I have more if you will, faith. Like, we track a few different like points in terms of news signals, and we get more positives on the Liontown versus tech, but I still think that we're gonna still hear a bit more about that. I don't think the final word has been said, but we probably should go into into a last topic. But do you have any other comments on the Liontown? I think we can skip ahead.
No, I mean, I think you know, I have a lot of time for juniors or private companies that are spending at least a little bit of money drilling to be able to show somehow what they've got. Okay, because those are going to be, you know, the juniors or the private companies that can actually access some cash, do some drilling, you know, strike a deal with a strategic partner, most likely on the, you know, direct lithium extraction or one of those technologies that are really the future, as we spoke before. Those are the guys that have a good shot at creating value for the shareholders and are going to be the targets for those who want to enter into this market into the mid tiers. Okay, the mid tiers that will happen. Today, the lithium market does not, the lithium industry does not have a mid tier. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing. You know, boys will be boys. The big deals will be the big deals, you know, just like, you know, Glencore can do their thing with tech or not. You know, BHP, Rio, Anglo can do their thing or not. It's the, you know, it's the same comparison that you have with, you know, SQM and, you know, Albemarle and those, you know, top tier players. They're going to be playing their own game at in their own level. It's a different court, a different system, right? You know, I want to see what happens with the mid tiers, particularly in Argentina. That's the one that excites me a bit more. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair not question, but it's a very fair sort of perspective, or I think seeing that is going to start changing the sector, and it's going to give it more you know, depth and make it more interesting as well, because you have today, as you said, we have like a bunch of explorers, and then you have the super major producers. So there's not a lot in between, and I think that's going to be really a needed change, because this space is so small still in comparison, for instance, to copper. Like the, you know, it's just the size of the market is it's another magnitude or more, at least. Yeah. So
let me put it this way, and I'll finish with this, right? I mean, anyone who wants exposure to copper, you know, downstream, I mean, is going to be able to find copper. Maybe it'll cost more, the price will be higher, but you'll be able to find copper. I mean, the reason why lithium off-takers or consumers are looking to get into the lithium mining business is because they're afraid, and it's a real fear. I mean, I think it's a justified fear that they will not have access to the product, no matter what the price is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's a valid concern.
Yeah, 100%.
I've given you my opinion of why, you know, the Liontown shareholders didn't accept the deal. But I actually don't know any Liontown shareholders. So I'd love to hear from Liontown shareholders about what they didn't like about the big premium that they were being offered. I mean, are they in this for the longer term, waiting for $75,000 lithium again?
Yeah, tell us in the comments if you're a Liontown, it's, you know, you're a shareholder or it's in your watch list. Leave us a comment below, and we'll read and reply.
And I mean, and again, I mean, if you're an Albemarle shareholder, I mean, you were about to spend, or the company was about to spend, I don't know, $5-6 billion in Liontown. I mean, isn't that better spent in Chile if you can actually do it to expand production there? You know, that's a valid question, right?
Yeah. Tell us what you think. Would love to hear. 100%.
Different market. Yeah.
All right. So then we said we've seen, and we talked about in the last episode in depth about what happened in Chile and what did not happen in Chile. But regardless of what actually happened, I think is going to be interesting to see, and it's going to be a meaningful signal for the markets to see what, especially Albemarle, I mean SQM as well, but especially Albemarle, in terms of, okay, so this happened, there's some, and we went in depth. So if you want to check out the other episode, we go in depth in terms of whether it was nationalized or is something else, and you can go there. But what is the $1 million question is, what is Albemarle going to do now? Are they gonna pause and think? Are they gonna diversify and go hard? What do you think, Lucho? What is going to happen with Albemarle and their acquisition strategy going forward?
That is the $1 million question, Paola, you know, I mean, if I was a betting man, which I'm prohibited to be a betting man, by the way. Yeah. Listen, I mean, Albemarle just made a bid that was, maybe it's not the end of that story. I would agree with you, but, going after one of the tier 1 lithium assets in the world, right? Spodumene, but tier 1, right? And they are currently the operators in the number 1 asset in the world in lithium, right? The Salar de Atacama. They, just recently, I mean, the last couple of years, basically renewed their contracts with the Chilean government. They're leasing contracts. They don't own the property, right? So they lease these concessions from the Chilean government, but it's the number 1 lithium asset in the world, right? They've just renewed the leases, and they are good until 2043. So they've got plenty of time, okay? No pressure. They have a neighbor, SQM, who only has leases until 2030 and has never gotten along with the Chilean government. So I don't know. I mean, I think they're the preferred guy to do something there, right? I mean, and if Albemarle is aggressive in pursuing, an asset in Australia, that is a tier 1 in that category of mining, why wouldn't you be aggressive trying to do something in Chile, where you're already an operator in the number 1 asset in the world? I mean, so I think that the new legislation is an invitation to do something new, and who better than with 2 guys that get along with each other? I mean, the Chilean government and Albemarle. I mean, I think they'll take the opportunity to actually, I mean, they don't need to extend their lease, but they can expand their lease, right? I mean, I would look at basically telling the government, I've got a lease until, I'm just speaking out of turn here, but I'm just I've got a contract until 2043 that you're going to respect. That's great. Why don't I expand my operations, increase my operations with a direct lithium extraction technology in a new area of the Atacama Salar for a period of time, improve my operations and call it stage 2. Okay. We talked about Maricunga in the Maricunga or the Maricunga project having stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is already contemplated with evaporation ponds and stuff like that. Stage 2 happily can be done with direct lithium extraction. Okay, with Codelco and the public-private partnership. I mean, I would seriously take that opportunity to basically look to expand rather than extend. And what better for the Chilean government? It's someone that they know already, someone that's working there already, someone that has the backing, right? The credibility. I mean, there's just so much that the Chilean government can, use in terms of justifying any decision they make. The Chilean government has been trying to do something with lithium for the last 10 years, more, right? I mean, since we've been around. You know, I was part of that, failed, lithium exploration contract, lithium exploitation contract back in what, 2010 and 2011. I was part of that. I was the runner-up. You could say that I was one of the guys that got SQM disqualified and this whole thing blew up. I mean, so they've been trying to do something. They can never justify it in the right way, right? So if you look at the chances, I mean, already operating, just renewed the contract, going to expand production. So I mean, they are going to contribute to putting Chile back in the map of the top producer. They're not going to do that by extending the contracts to 2060. They're going to do that by expanding production. Expanding production means new projects like Maricunga, right? Maricunga is the by far the most advanced, but there's not that many others after that, right? I mean, after Maricunga, you don't even have advanced exploration. You just have exploration projects. Some have been drilled, others haven't, but nothing getting close to a PFS or pre-feasibility or feasibility study in Chile. So the only place that you can really expand is with one of the current producers. I don't think it'll be SQM. SQM is going to be a lot more focused on extending than expanding, because 2030 is right now. So the natural would be Albemarle, and even though that wasn't what I think, that, as I said it before, that I think that the lithium policy was more directed towards doing something with SQM. I think there's a perfect opportunity for Albemarle to take advantage of that and sort of look at what the government wants to do and what the objectives of the policy are. They could fit quite well into that policy.
That I agree with that. The point that probably other people, especially people that don't know Chile in depth, are going, and even more if you're a shareholder of Albemarle, I think you're looking at this in a slightly different way. The percentage, like Chile, the weight of Chile in Albemarle's revenue is between 30 to 40%. And if you're looking at that as like, okay, so there's risk in this 40%, let's say, bucket. Shouldn't we try to expand on the 60%? So, or not just on the 60% or so existing operations, but also look into areas that are not connected to this issue, this new problem that, as we said, is not as big as a problem as people have sort of talked about widely in the media. And it does create a big opportunity, and you've talked about it just now and also in the last episode. But if you were an Albemarle shareholder, would you want them to say, we're going to have more exposure to Chile, we're going to be, more linked, even though in the short term, it may sound, okay, we can have, and I fully agree, and there's a lot of opportunity, and it's opening a lot of other salars, not just the rest of the Salar de Atacama, but others. So that's why it's the $1 million question, because it's like, okay, so the shareholders may come and say, in a revolt, say like, stop putting so much money and go and buy Liontown and go and buy, Pilbara or whoever. And then others may say, no, let's just keep doing more in Chile. So I think that's...
I mean, yeah, let's go back to copper, right? Where are some of the richest copper deposits in the world right now? The DRC and Africa. I mean, and people are going there. Because you know what? It's one of the richest deposits in the world, right? I mean, Chile might have a bit of a screwed up lithium strategy, policy, whatever you want to call it, but it's still Chile, right? I mean, and the Atacama is the premier lithium asset in the world. And it's not even close to being depleted.
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, yeah, if I'm a shareholder and you tell me, hey, you know, I want to expand in Chile, go for it, man. I mean, I would love to have the opportunity to expand in the best lithium asset in the world, right? I mean, I think any large player would be very happy to expand in the Salar de Atacama. Okay, but there are two players already there, so they have the advantage, and one of them is at a disfavor with the government, and the other one is not only in favor with the government, but actually doesn't have the pressure of negotiating with the government for the next 20 years. It's a perfect negotiating position. It's a perfect way to, you know, be creative, work with the government, talk about these public-private partnerships. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I talk about it, the more I believe it. I mean, you know, let's write a book on this one. I mean, let's tell them how to do
Yes,
it.
let's do it. Let's do it.
Because, I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. Now, you know, you obviously have to believe in the asset and believe in Chile still being around producing, you know, Chile's national policy in terms of mining and particularly lithium to still allow you to produce at you know, in 40, 50 years time.
Mhm.
But you know, the biggest problem with countries going into, you know, we said, I mean, Chile's not nationalizing and stuff like that, but the trend is the government takes a bigger share, a bigger piece of the pie. Taxes, royalties, whatever you want to call it, right? But the biggest problem with that is when the government wants to take a piece of a pie that does not taste well. Right? I mean, if you got a pizza and the government wants to take half the pizza and the pizza isn't even that good, it's like, you know, why bother? Right? I mean, this is the best tasting, the best looking pizza in town, in the world, right? I mean, yeah, it's Atacama. I mean, it's got very high grades. It's literally the driest, one of the driest places on earth. So for
Yeah.
those who, but I mean, with the direct lithium extraction, I mean, that place is, you know, it's liquid gold, right? I mean, it's been called that. So I don't, I think it just it makes sense. And I mean, if I were a shareholder, if I wanted exposure to lithium and I was already a shareholder, that would be, you know, I would love for them to do something, and they've got the competitive advantage right now. Now, you know, on the other hand, I mean, you know, I guess one of the biggest questions around is Codelco really going to dedicate the time, effort, and resources to actually move this lithium policy forward whilst the National Lithium Company gets formed and stuff like that? Is this government going to really want to follow through on this policy? If they do, then you're probably going to see four things happen right away. One, a renegotiation with SQM, whether SQM likes it or not. They're going to have to sit at the table. You're going to see advances on Maricunga. Okay. You're going to see the juniors trying to make inroads and basically trying to create the atmosphere to raise money, do some drilling, you know, what we talked about earlier, you know, put some holes in the ground and show that between direct lithium extraction and their, you know, their grade, they have something for a mid-tier and create that mid-tier sector that I think anyway Argentina has a competitive advantage with anyway. But the fourth will be to try to do something with Atacama and Albemarle. If I were the Chilean government, I mean, I would be sitting down with Albemarle and saying, did you hear those two people talking on that podcast the other day? I think we should do that. That's just me.
Yeah, no, I think you know, they should listen. They should listen. Definitely.
They've thought about it already. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I'm, you know, it's not, it wouldn't be a surprise to know that Chile has plans, bigger plans for the Atacama, right? And that not only Albemarle, but anyone who's in the lithium business has their eyes on the Atacama. So
yeah, I
yeah,
think that the sad thing was that it was communicated so poorly that instead of having you know, a kind of more positive impact, it has had, you know, a lot of fear and a lot of pain, and some of the stocks that have exposure to the region or to the country. And at the same time, I think it has caused the, you know, the lithium has, the price started to fall this year, and now it's starting to tick up again. I don't know if it's, you know, just because of this, but you know, it could. So yeah, I just it would have been better if someone had communicated more properly. We have seen a few. I saw Chris Berry on BNN Bloomberg, I think, talking about this, explaining that this is not. So there have been now some voices that are sort of explaining that this was not a nationalization, and some of the media now are saying partial nationalization or gradual nationalization, which is still wrong, but you know, at least it's you know, it's sort of fixing.
but by now, Paula, anyone who is actually in the lithium market, whether it be a company, a corporate, a shareholder, a stakeholder, already knows what
Yeah.
that policy is about and the pitfalls of it and the communication, stuff like that. So it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, no,
Right? I mean,
it's the rest of the world, like, or a lot of the retail investors that, you know, have kind of suffered the pain because, you know. All right. I think this was lovely. It's always good fun to have these conversations. We feel like it's just a chat between you and I. Like, we always talk a lot anyway. So I love this podcast. They're really fun, good fun. So anyway, thank you everybody for listening to this episode. If you wanna make sure that you don't miss the next one, please subscribe, and we'll keep it going. Every 2 weeks, we'll be here talking about deals and what's happening in mining and investment. All right.
All right. Thanks, Paula. Have a good day.
Bye, Lucho. Have a good evening.